Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Simple Living, High Thinking. I'm joined by Tadeo Souza, and Varangi is out today, so just Tadeo and me, Kim Pollander, and we are unpacking Tukaram Prabhu's weekly Bhagavad Gita class from every Friday night, and we are in the early texts of chapter 5. So, Tadeo, is there any context that you want to give for setting up today's verses?
Yes, but in order to go along with how class developed on Friday, I think the context that would be viable for today's talk would be slightly different than the context we usually cover. So the context that we usually go over is that we highlight and summarize the teachings of starting on chapter 2, and then we link that to chapter 3, and we relate everything up to the point that we are starting today. That's usually how we do the context. I think today a context slightly different would be more viable based on what came up in class this past Friday. And that context would be to really migrate ourselves to Arjuna and Arjuna's culture at the time that the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna took place in the battle of Kurukshetra, which is that there were two different types of group, two different types of people that were transcendentalists, spiritualists. One group of people had a more calm, a more inactive nature, more contemplative, not necessarily acting in the world as much, but acting the bare minimum and aspiring for spiritual perfection in that way. And then the other group of people, they were more engaged. They had families. They cultivated the land, for example, for to produce their food, like cows, etc. They engaged in commercial of products, farm products, milk, fruits, etc. So they were more engaged in the world, but nevertheless, they were also pursuing spiritual perfection. And these two group of people, they were quite prominent. It was almost as if you belonged to either group A or group B. Perhaps the best example that we could give today in 2020, United States of America, would be the Republicans or the Democrats. Like, who are you going to vote for? And essentially, as far as I can remember, those two parties, the Republicans and Democrats, have been essentially your only two choices. There had been other candidates that were independents or other parties, I guess, but they never really gained that much traction. You end up, usually, each election, you end up with a Democrat nominee and a Republican nominee, and those are your two choices. And usually, I know this is a context, but I'm going to expand the context a little bit here now. And this may be a little bit of a tangent, but I want to bring this example very to light. So usually, psychologically speaking, we have biases. As we grow up, we develop categories in our mind, the way we think. And we fit the world, we fit people, we fit circumstances into different categories. It allows us to navigate the world easier. For example, you conceive of a number of things that are dangerous, and then you put X, Y, and Z situation, X, Y, and Z ideology, X and Y and Z people even, in this category of dangerous things. And then every time you are faced with such categories, you defend yourself because you are in a dangerous situation. Similarly, we create other categories for so many different things. And again, it helps us navigate the world so we don't have to analyze every minute detail, people, or circumstance in an individual manner. So therefore, we have these categories, we have these biases, and you grow up in a particular family with categories already made up and biases already established, and you kind of become that. It's not really a volunteer choice. you kind of just become that which you see, that way in which you were born into. And you're then a Democrat or you are a Republican. Very rarely somebody becomes quite introspective and really considers, okay, I may have been born with a set of presuppositions and biases and categories that are going to be given to me by my family, but really, what is the truth? What am I really seeking? And it takes a lot of courage for you to step away from predetermined thought patterns, ideologies, etc., that was inherited by you, and really think and really analyze the world around you, and really step outside of the boundaries that were made up for you already, and really think and really pursue the truth. In fact, the definition of a philosopher is that person who loves the truth, to the extent that I let go of my own preconceived notions and biases and presuppositions, because I'm actually interested in the truth. I'm not interested in following any one particular ideology. And I'm truly just looking for truth. And I think that's beauty in that, because you are quite rational in a helpful way. You are forced to develop a lot of critical thinking. And I think it's like a beautiful position to be. So again, that was a bit of a tangent. Back to the context. The Arjuna was really in a culture where these two groups of people existed. Either you're more inactive, therefore sannyasi, or you're more active and therefore a yogi. And Arjuna, however, was truly contemplative. He was really interested in finding out, well, which one is best for me? Which one of these two paths should I embrace? So not that he was born in a family of Kshatriyas, he was a Kshatriya by nature, let's say a Democrat, but he's taking a step back and saying, hey, wait a minute, exactly what am I doing? Like, what is really the truth? What is most beneficial for us really? So let me consider some ideology of the Republicans. Let's have that discussion. Let's talk about it and really arrive at some truth. So that's the context that I want to bring today, because what has happened so far in Bhagavad Gita is that on chapter 2, this theme comes up, the theme of, should I pursue spiritual perfection by being more active or by being more inactive in the world? A yogi or a sannyasi? That came up in chapter 2. We have used different terminologies to describe this different type of approaches to spirituality, but essentially they have been analyzed in these two buckets, this dichotomy, right? You're either more active or you're more inactive. And it comes up on chapter 2. And Krishna deals with that topic in chapter 2 very definitively. But then in chapter 3, Arjuna still seems confused and asks again, okay, but which one of the two is better for me? And then we were thinking, how come, Arjuna? How come you didn't get it, right? Because Krishna was so clear, like, what's happening? Yes, let's be empathetic. You're having a really bad day, so we'll give you a pass that you were very bewildered in your mind, and the clarity in which Krishna preached to you wasn't clear enough. So yes, you get a pass on that. But then again, Krishna covers that topic in chapter 3 from yet different angles. And then on chapter 4, it comes up again, and you're already starting to begin to thinking like, okay, like Arjuna must be having a really hard time. And then Krishna deals with the topic again, but from yet different point of views and different circumstances and so on, almost anticipating any arguments against what Krishna was trying to teach Arjuna, foreseeing what are all the arguments that could come up that would be in favor of being more of a sannyasi and rejecting your duties, and against being a yogi and being more engaged in the war, which is clearly what Arjuna did not want to do. He did not want to fight. So Krishna then has the opportunity to foresee all the objections and cover all grounds. So in that sense, it's helpful. And then on chapter 5, Arjuna starts the chapter by again asking that question. So now we are left with these two ways of understanding Bhagavad Gita in its early chapters. Is Arjuna just having a really hard time and not really that bright and can't really understand and is just being repetitive for no reason? Is it that actually Krishna thinks that this topic is so important and it is inspiring Arjuna from within to keep asking the same question again and again, so that Krishna does have the opportunity to cover the topic from multiple different angles and multiple different point of views, so that definitively one may get it. It is best for you to be a yogi and engage with devotion and not be attached to the results. So there are all these different possibilities that come up in our mind if we are trying to assess what has happened in Bhagavad Gita so far. So this is the context that I wanted to bring up, like what has happened, what is the culture that Arjuna is coming from, which can justify why is he asking this question so much again and again. And the little tangent I brought up in terms of our psychology, how our traditionally and in average, how most people work in psychology in that way with categories, presuppositions, etc., to kind of bring it all together and not look at it and not look at Bhagavad Gita in its early chapters as repetitive or Arjuna just being not such a bright cookie and asking the same question again and again. That's not what's going on. Let's remember, Arjuna was an extraordinary being. He was God's cousin, you know, so he was a very elevated person. He was a very powerful being, and he was so magnanimous that he was in the status of Krishna's friend. That's like God's most intimate friend, God's cousin. He was really intelligent. So you wouldn't follow that he's just being somehow ignorant or dumb, stupid, you know, and asking the same question again and again. That's not the point. I think it's like with the context that I was making an effort to highlight, is like, no, that was a big dilemma. Like, I really want our country to become better. I don't want to just vote Democrat because I fit into a black body and traditionally black people vote Democrats. No, I don't want to do that. I'm actually really interested in my country. I really want to know, are there any thoughts and ideas that the Republicans have to offer? And would they be truly better for the country? And if so, what are the variables? What are the circumstances under which that ideology would be better versus this other one? And I think that's what's going on with Arjuna. He's really trying to understand like what's truly happening and to his merits, because to be contemplative, to be a person that is sincerely seeking for truth is rare nowadays. And those are very good qualities that society would benefit by embracing this approach. In fact, even the Constitution of the United States says that the people who supposedly hold the power, right? It starts like that, we the people. So the people are supposed to watch a presidential debate, a philosophical presidential debate, and that the two candidates are supposed to engage in a philosophical debate against around what's best for the country, which there are two big implications. That number one, the people are supposed to be trained in philosophy, because otherwise, how can you understand the intricacies of a philosophical debate? In order for you to understand what's being said, you need to be familiar with the rules of philosophical debates so that you can make a concrete decision. But who today has such philosophical training? And furthermore, which two candidates are actually engaging in a philosophical debate? Rather, what's happening nowadays is that they're just attacking one another. They're just saying, why is it that the other person is not a fit person to be a president? And they just attack each other's morality, personally, attacking each other viciously. So there's not a philosophical debate going on. And even if there was, would the people have enough philosophical training, enough philosophical disposition to understand the bigger topics and then vote accordingly? our society was meant to be built in this principle. It's not happening nowadays, but that's what it was meant to be. And again, a person like Arjuna is being that person who wants to understand, who wants to analyze and hear the different point of views, and then make a concrete decision of what's best for himself and what's best for his culture and society at large. So I think it is something that we can appreciate from Arjuna. He's not being redundant. He's not being ignorant. He's really treating the subject with the respect and that it deserves, with the attention and focus that it deserves. He's questioning, what do I do in my life? How do I live life? As opposed to, whatever makes you happy. It's an easy way route. Let's take ownership of our future, of our destiny, both individually and at large in regards to my society. And I think Arjuna is displaying that by showing us, let's treat the subjects that are important in a very important manner. Let's ask questions that are relevant to people that are qualified to answer. And then it's giving Krishna the opportunity to answer those questions from so many different ways, many different point of views, that allows us to truly understand what is best for us. So so that's the context that I wanted to bring, not that it's just being repetitive. Arjuna is asking the same questions again, but there's a reason. It shows Arjuna's qualities and Krishna's covering this point from every single perspective that definitively gives us what's best for us. And he highlights that Krishna truly cares. He's not losing patience with Arjuna. He's answering the same question again and again from so many different point of views, which shows how much of a qualified teacher Krishna is and how much he really cares, because he's not looking at Arjuna and saying, come on, man, I already told you that. Like, what's wrong with you? It's like, no, okay, oh, you still care about this? You're treating this with so much respect and you're valuing this topic so much? Okay, then hear from me the same thing again, but from this different angle, which is going to bring you all the clarity, all the expanded knowledge that you were looking for. I'm a qualified teacher and I'm here to give it to you. So to me, that's the context that I wanted to bring up. That's what's going on in these early chapters.
Yeah, and back in chapter 2 and 3, when Arjuna kept repeating kind of the similar question or concern from a different angle, I was thinking, what would have happened if Arjuna just got it right away? And then, okay, great, I'm going to fight now. And then we'd miss out on chapters 5 through 18 or whatever the case may be. So I think I've always been curious about, well, Arjuna was obviously an elevated soul. Did he just feign ignorance for our sake to elaborate on it? But as you're speaking, it really brings to light the dilemma he was in. And you mentioned the word Kshatriya, and just to clarify, Kshatriya is such a different state. It's like a warrior. It's almost questioning his manhood if he were to step down from that caste, or whatever word you want to use to describe it. The warriors looking at him like, what are you doing? That would have been a huge deal. So.
Exactly. In fact, in the previous chapters, there's one text where Arjuna says, I would rather die in the battlefield unarmed, unresistant, than to go fight against the people that I love. So that's the mentality of who we're talking about here. Which person nowadays, perhaps you can do that thought experiment yourself. What would it take for you to think, let somebody kill me unarmed and I'm fine with that? Like, it shows so much about you. You're not afraid of death. You've conquered your fear of death. You honor your position. You honor your stance to the extent that you would rather die than to betray your own integrity, than to become somebody who you are not. Like, just kill me. Like, I'll give up my life, but I will not lose my integrity. I mean, to me, this is like a Jesus Christ type of act. Like, yes, crucify me, but I am not going to stop preaching what my Father sent me here to preach. So it shows so much of the character of a person. And For Arjuna to say, look, in chapter 2, text 5, Arjuna says, it would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of lives of great souls who are our teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So when Arjuna says here, it would be better to live by begging, begging is an activity that sannyasis engaged because they are sannyasis, they are renounced from the material world completely, even renouncing their duties. So in order for them to eat, they literally need to beg because they don't do anything. They don't act in the world. So to fulfill the necessities of life and give nutrition into their bodies, they literally go out begging. In fact, Tukaram was describing that I have not had the privilege and opportunity to go to India yet. So, but I'm yet to see it, but I have been around many people who goes back and forth and for over a decade right now. And I've heard this so many times that it would be difficult for you to distinguish a true homeless person and a saintly person because they're both on the streets begging for food. But one is a saintly person, but highly elevated, very much a spiritualist person. But the other is truly a homeless, really poor person who's like begging to eat, otherwise they'll die. One is by choice, the other is not. So the sannyasi is literally begging, and that's part of their activities they do when you embrace that life, that sannyasi status. So a kshatriya, for a kshatriya to beg it's a huge dishonor. A kshatriya, part of what comes with the kshatriya mentality is that I am a leader, I'm strong, I defend and protect others who can't defend and protect themselves. And you have all this honor to the extent that Arjuna would say, hey, I rather die in the battlefield, unresisting, like take my life, than to do something that I believe is immoral, than to do something that I believe is not aligned with who I am. But yet he's not saying, hey, I'd rather go begging, which means give up my kshatriya status than to kill these people that I love. So it's a huge dilemma. It's not an easy thing. What he's confronted with here right now, it is a huge dilemma. Like if you're saying I'd rather give up my kshatriya status, you don't say that in that culture, in that mentality. That's not something you do. But he's even considering that. So it was a big point, you know. It's like a big dilemma, and Krishna is there to help him. What do you think?
Yeah, I really also liked how you brought up how compassionate Krishna was towards Arjuna with his repeated questioning, and how Krishna just demonstrated his just desire for Arjuna to learn and provided so many different ways, angles, metaphors to teach Arjuna and walk him through it. And he was so patient and kind. And it really highlights Krishna's love for his devotee. And not just Arjuna, but anyone who's struggling to learn or struggling to accept things and are just desiring more knowledge. And Krishna will always be there providing the answers.
Yeah, and I think as a side realization from the point you just made, compassion, right, is also the importance in spiritual life, the importance of finding a bona fide teacher, bona fide guru. Because oftentimes nowadays there's so many complications in the world, right? Pandemics, racial protests, elections coming up. Like everybody has an opinion about them, but those opinions are usually uneducated and shallow. Because if you say, hey, what do you prefer? Do you prefer Republicans or Democrats? Oh, I prefer the Democrats. I don't like the Republicans. Oh, why? Well, because the Republicans are terrible. Okay. Why? Like, why then are you more of a Democrat? Well, because I could never see myself voting Republicans. I'm always going to vote Democrat because like Democrats really care. Okay. Why? Like, What makes you feel that the Democrats care and the Republicans are bad? Oh, you know, the Republicans are terrible. And that circular reasoning goes around. Like, you never get you anything. It's super shallow. You never truly understand anything. And such people are posing as teachers. Oh, listen to me. I have something to teach you. I have something that is worthwhile you listening to. And there's so many people like that around. And also, such people are posing as spiritual teachers. But then when you start pressing about why, okay, I got the point. You're not going to vote Republican. You're going to vote Democrat. But just tell me, why is it that you don't like the Republicans? Oh, because they're terrible. That's not an answer. That's a presupposition. That's something that you got from the ideology of those whom are telling the truth. But you yourself never thought about it. Now, Krishna here is being asked that same question so many times. And every single time he's answering with so much depth, with so much knowledge from different point of views that can help you in circumstance A, that can help you in circumstance B, that can help you in circumstance C. And that's a qualified teacher. I can get to the bottom of the issue. I will go beyond a shallow answer. And I'm going to do that every single time you ask that same question. So Krishna is showing here the example of a teacher. He's really qualified to answer the one question, being asked from different angles and answering every single time from different angles as well. And never shying away from the depth of the topic at hand.
Yeah, and also Arjuna was exemplifying what it means to be a good student. We have a lecture here in Long Beach every Saturday night, and Tukaram got into a heated or perhaps elevated discussion with one of the attendings who was a devotee, very dedicated to Hare Krishna. And we were having a conversation about, from a science point of view, a scientific, logical point of view, as to how to talk to someone about Krishna consciousness in a way that's not dogmatic, like, oh, because my book says so. And what transpired was what can happen if we just become too caught up in what you mentioned, our biases, and what we think is right, and not open to deeper ways of thinking or alternative ways of thinking to make the conversation more robust. And so Arjuna could have easily said, Krishna, you know, could have like dug in his heels a little bit more at any point along the way up until where we are now, but he didn't. He was always humble, which I think is one of the keys that all of our gurus teach about. If you want to know Krishna, you have to first, number one, be humble, find some humility, and understand that your gurus and teachers are empowered, divinely empowered. And so I really liked how Arjuna is just exemplifying what it means to be a good student when you have the ultimate teacher available to you.
That's an excellent point. Also, internally, we pretend a lot of times. Let's say that a difficult subject is being discussed and somebody says, you know, you got my point? And we may, and actually, let me say, I'm speaking for myself. I assume that others are as foolish as I am. So I'm speaking for myself. So sometimes we're having a conversation which I believe I understood the point. Maybe I've been sincerely contemplating the point for many years. I've asked others and they gave me answers that were congruent, and I accept them as truth from honorable people. So then I'm complete with that topic. And if I engage in a conversation with somebody on that point and the questions are coming around, and let's say a person asks me, did you get it? I'm like, yes, I got it. I got the point. Another type of conversation could be, yeah, I got it, but like, I just got it. You know, it's not something that I've been complete with, but yes, I think I got it. And I'm excited. I really love when that happens. And my reaction is almost like, yeah, I got it. But then, and I have like a follow-up question to really make sure I understood all the points, right? So that's something else that I've experienced. But another point is something that seems to be rather simple, let's say, but for some reason I can't get it. And everybody around me seems to have understood. And I just don't want to sound foolish and ignorant. And the question would come, you got it? Like, you with me? And I'd be like, yeah, I got it. But truly I didn't. Like internally, I'm pretending that I understood, but I did not. And I know that when that happens, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to read the purport. I'm going to try to bring the context, but I still haven't gotten it myself. Well, Arjuna is free from that vice of mine. You know, like I think he believes he's got it, but he's asking again and again. He's not pretending that he knows. He's taking the issue very seriously, and he's asking the questions very seriously. And that does require humility, the humility to disclose your ignorance, the humility to put yourself out there and be like, you know what, no, I didn't get it. In a submissive way. That's an art and a science. In a submissive way, which is to say in a humble way, to let go of how others will perceive your ignorance and still go back and ask the question again. It's like, no, I didn't get it, but please explain it again. Let me ask you from a different perspective with different words, which then I can perhaps understand it better. So it displays that of Arjuna as well. So I think it's a great point that you brought that up.
Oh. Well, shall we get into what the texts are for this week?
Yes. Would you like to read it?
Oh, sure, I can read it. Okay, so we started off with text 10. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. In text 11, the yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. In text 12, the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all his activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. And then finally, text 13, when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, or the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
What are your comments on this text, Kim?
I thought it was a nice elaboration from last week, where we were talking more about the senses, how you pointed out the internal senses and then the internal action senses and then the outward actions that you can take from it. And so it's just more, I think, seeding the idea of not being attached to the results, and what the benefits are from that is, oh, you don't have karmic reactions. And that still to me seems so, I don't know, so high of a level of attainment to get to that place of, wow, you move about in this world without any karmic reactions. You're always aligned to what your duty is at a high level.
Yes. The text 11, the yogis abandoning attachments act with body, mind, and intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. There is, it comes up in the Gita, and I think traditionally in religion at large, this topic comes up that we need to give everything to God, that we offer, like Jesus Christ says this, right? That we should love God with all our mind, our body, and our soul. But this text here, the yogis using body, mind, and intelligence for the purpose of purification. So this sense of all-inclusiveness, like giving everything for the purpose of spiritual purification or love of God or your spiritual goal, right? And I wanted to comment on that because I suffer from this misunderstanding as well, hearing that, oh, we have to give everything to God. I thought, well, even my laptop or my Apple Watch as well, like my Tesla stocks, like should I give everything to God like that? Like, is that what it means to give everything to God? And you know, it's not. And the reason why I think it's very nuanced, it's an interesting philosophical experiment, uh, 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 thought exercise, that we know that everything comes from Krishna. Krishna is the source from which everything comes, which means that uh, earth, water, air, fire, etc., ether, all the elements of material nature, it comes from Krishna. So all the gold, all the diamonds, everything, all the riches of this planet already belongs to Krishna. The design of our bodies, our own intelligence with which we create phenomenal companies that are super viable in the stock market and so on. The people who created these companies, like Elon Musk, such an intelligent person doing phenomenal work, the intelligence he possesses to create SpaceX and Tesla and all the other companies that he's got, that intelligence is not his. That intelligence also comes from some place, comes from Krishna. Krishna is the source of everything. So everything already belongs to Krishna. So when we say we gotta give everything to Krishna, it's not a charitable act. It's not that, hey, these things belong to me and I'm gonna be so cool that I'm gonna give it to Krishna. That's contrary. Like I heard one of our teachers once give a great example about this, which would be, imagine you walk into a bank, like a high profile bank on a busy day, and you go right in the middle of the floor, you put your hands up, and you yell out, and you say, I surrender all the money in this bank. I give it up. Like, what would people think of you? Like, people would think you're nuts because you're giving up all the money in this bank. The money in the bank doesn't belong to you to begin with. So why are you surrendering that money? It's not yours to begin with. So again, you know, the idea that we give up everything for God, that we give everything to God, is not that Krishna wants an Apple Watch and you're going to give him yours and then you don't have it anymore and you're bent out of shape because of that. It's something much higher than that. Krishna is not in need of anything. But the yogi that is being described in here is that yogi who is giving everything. Because what it is that you give to Krishna, if he's already the possessor of everything, you give Krishna the things which are yours by your free will. That was also given to you by Krishna. So Krishna gave you the body and gave you a mind and gave you an intelligence along with free will. So now it means that you can use your body, you can use your mind and your intelligence and your senses in whatever way you want, because you have that free will to use them however you want. So to give everything to God, we're not talking our small little temporary material possessions. We're talking about our body and our mind. With my mind, I'm going to think of Krishna. With my body, I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to go to places that are holy, holy places where holy activities and holy people will be present. That's how I'm going to use my body. And my intelligence. How can I serve Krishna better? How can I engage others in Krishna's service? Using your intelligence, your mind, your body in that way is really what we mean by giving everything to Krishna. And that's a description of this yogi here, the yogi abandoning attachments, meaning I don't want things to satisfy myself. I want things to satisfy Krishna because I am attached to my own sense enjoyment, to my own sense gratification. So I'm giving that up. It is no longer for me, but instead I'm going to act with my body. Every single action that is performed with my body, guided by my mind and intelligence and my senses, are for the purpose of purification. Such purification is going to bring me closer to Krishna. That's really what we mean by giving everything up. You know, so I wanted to make that point here in text 11. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, that's so nicely explained. And I'm glad you called that out about, okay, because I'm sure that's a question for many people who are new to this tradition. It was for me about, okay, are we supposed to give up 50% of our, how does this work? You know, does it require giving up a portion of our paycheck in a regulated way? Because I grew up in Christianity, a very conservative form of Christianity, where my parents told me that I needed to tithe 10%. And so babysitting money, anything I made, money I made, I was always grilled very hard, like, yeah, you need to tithe. And I would ask, well, is this gross or is this net? And then they said it was gross. And so then you get down into these details and it's like, ugh, it just pulls you out of the whole intention altogether. You're
Right.
just giving back to God. And so I like that you nicely explained what that looks like in today's world with Apple Watches and all that. And I liked Tukaram's point in class where he said, yeah, you're acting out of self-interest in a way, but it's for the purpose of purification, for self-realization, and that's a good thing.
Mhm. Right. The other point I want to bring up is on the very next text, text 12. They steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. I want to make a point which we discussed in previous episodes again. Uh, I believe is a very helpful point. What Krishna is saying here is that there is a way that by which you can attain peace. So the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. That's a standard, what Krishna is saying here. That's a truth. That is a absolute truth that Krishna is speaking here. It's not relative. It means that I can be in a black body in South America. I can be in a male black body in South America. I can be in a female white body, North America. I can be in a whatever kind of body, in whatever kind of country in this world. And there is going to be one absolute way in which you can attain peace, is by offering the results of all activities to me. So that's objective. That's part of what we were saying, like what is truth? Philosophers are seeking for truth. Krishna here is talking about truth, absolute truths. So the point is that peace, happiness, things seemingly abstract topics such as peace and happiness and so on, these things are not subjective. It is not, it shouldn't be followed by, hey, yeah, whatever makes you happy, you should pursue that. Like parents in relationship to their children. Oh, I want what's best for my children. Okay, I think most or all relatively sane in their psychology parents would want what's best for their children. So that's in common, no problem. But oftentimes, what that means to a lot of parents, actually, I engage in this conversation often, is that, well, whatever makes my children happy, that's what I want for them. I want them to be happy, sure. And whatever makes them happy, that's what I want. So that thought is predicated on the assumption that happiness, peace are subjective, because whatever makes you happy, whatever is going to bring you peace, then do that. No, it's not like that. Krishna is outlining here a ultimate absolute truth. If you want to be peaceful, you want to attain peace, oh, don't think you're going to attain peace by doing whatever it is that you, subjectively speaking, want. It's not up for you. It has already been defined. You want to attain peace, then give up the results of all your activities onto Krishna. And if you do that, you attain peace, and not by any other means. So I think it's quite important for us to understand that we have there's an ontological position of the soul. We are part and parcel of Krishna. That's what is. That's what exists. Souls are spirit, part of the Supreme Spirit, which is Krishna. We're the tiny spirit. And we have a nature. If we serve Krishna, because we are part of Krishna, we become happy. If we are embodied in material bodies, in material existence, and we act as we inevitably must, but if we act in a way that we give up the results of our fruits, of our actions, the fruits of our actions, we give that up to Krishna, we're going to attain peace. Those things are objective. Those things are absolute truth. And Krishna, I mean, I don't think that that's the point that Krishna is trying to make in this text, but I think that in 2020, for the way our society functions today, it's one aspect of this text that we could see and utilize it in that way. Happiness, peace, those things are not subjective. It's not whatever makes you happy or whatever makes you peaceful. There are ways, Krishna is talking about them, that things we must do in order to become truly happy and truly peaceful. And to define what these things mean is also very helpful. What do we mean by peace? Do we mean like the fuzzy feeling we get on a Friday night before you go to bed? Oh, I'm peaceful because the week is over and tomorrow is Saturday, so then I'm peaceful, but then you wake up on Monday and you're stressed again? That's not peace. That's just the cessation of suffering. Or, oh, I'm happy because I won the lottery. My guru is so much of a social scientist. He really embraces observing society for the purpose of being able to connect with people in general and give them Krishna consciousness. So he likes the scientific approach of understanding society from the point of view of data, like what has happened, like what the studies around data has shown. And one example he brings up oftentimes is that there's this one individual. This is actually true. It's actually happening in our history, like in our lifetimes. One person won the lottery, which the chances of you winning the lottery, it's already so small. It's like the chances of you getting hit by a thunder are higher, by lightning, is higher than the chances of you winning the lottery. This person won the lottery. And then I think some time passed. I think it was not even a year. That same person won the lottery again, twice. And these are like huge amounts, like really, really huge amounts. Well, as far as I can conceive, in our current society, in the Western world, 2020, United States of America, the closest synonym to happiness is money. The more money you have, the happier you're going to be. That's what we struggle so much for. That's what we attain the so-called education and then strive for so-called high positions in corporate America so that you can make more money, so you can have higher statuses, so then you can ultimately become happy. Well, this person, as statistics have shown about others that have won the lottery, your happiness levels go up by 18 months, so a year and a half. After a year and a half, your happiness level dropped to the exact same point that you were prior to winning the lottery. So that happiness that we're going to attain, because our lifestyle is now completely different. I am now a multi-millionaire, just won the lottery. So I can do whatever I want. I can travel, I can quit my job, I can buy the latest of everything, I buy a new home, I even buy the people I love some cool stuff, right? And that would be happiness. But then when they measure their psychological health and what they would say of themselves, whether or not they're happy, 18 months later, they're back to being their normal selves. They still have a lot of money, but their happiness is no longer there. Well, this individual was no different, except that person won the lottery twice. And sure enough, 18 months after winning the lottery for the second time, the person is no longer so happy. They're back to being their normal self. They're back to the same old issues, right? So I think I'm using this analogy to highlight my points that happiness, peace, these things are not subjective. It is like, oh, whatever makes you happy. Like, what is happiness? Are we talking about winning the lottery? How many times? Twice? Okay, do that. 18 months later, you're back to the old self. That's not the happiness we're talking about. We understand that we are eternal beings. So we are looking for eternal happiness. So when we say, when I spiritually say happy or love or peace, there is a quality for these things, the quality of eternality, the quality of knowledge, the quality of bliss. In order to attain that, which is our goal, which is why we do what we do, to be in love with Krishna forever, spiritually speaking, eternally, it's objective. It's not whatever you think is going to work for you. Krishna is highlighting here, how do you attain peace? If you are embodied, if you are, as we all are spirit souls, embodied in a material body, if you want to become peaceful, which is the beginning of your happiness, you cannot be happy unless you have peace. If you want to attain that, it starts by being peaceful, a platform of peace. And this is how we attain peace, not any other ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like your point of how do you define happiness? And in my counseling practice, I deal with people with a lot of anxiety, and I'll ask them, what are you anxious about? What will make you happy? What will bring you peace? And it's inevitably the cycle that you just mentioned. Well, if I get a better job, or if I move on from this boyfriend, or if I get a better relationship, and it's just always a moving target and a dangling carrot. And so how long do you need to chase your tail before you start to seek something else? Something's got to give, where maybe it's time to seriously look into something completely different, something that involves critical thinking and something that logically makes sense, that could actually bring you peace on a deeper level. So really breaking it down, like what would make you happy? What are you unhappy about? And it just highlights what you said, how subjective it all is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And ironically enough, I think would be a good point for us to end with. It's like, since I think we're running out of time, right? Is the very next text. I mean, I wasn't really considering this, but then this is the routes that our conversation took. But if you go to text 13, which is the last text we cover in class, Krishna is saying, when the embodied living being, Krishna is talking about the soul, the embodied living being is the eternal spiritual soul. Controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions. So see, there's like a formula here. You control your nature and you mentally renounce all actions, meaning you're giving them up for Krishna. And you control your senses, meaning you use them to please Krishna. So when you do all that, what is the result? What happens to you? Then he resides happily in the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates are the 9 openings of the body. We covered that in a previous episode. So Krishna here, the 9 gates, the city of 9 gates means the body and the spirit soul within the body. That spirit soul within the material body will reside there happily, but by doing these things that Krishna mentions in this text, controlling your nature and renouncing the activities to Krishna, renouncing your actions. So Krishna is highlighting again the point that we were just discussing here, things that we can do that are objectively true and absolute truth. It is not the case that, well, but what if I leave this body and I incarnate again in Jupiter, in another planet? Then if I renounce my actions there, and if I control my nature there in another body, in another planet, will I be happy there as well? Will this approach work there as well? Yes, that's what we mean by absolute truth. It's not relative. It doesn't matter which type of body you have. It doesn't matter where you are in the universe. You follow this absolute truth that Krishna is prescribing here. you're going to attain the same results at all times. So this is scientific and it's an absolute truth, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we are at the end of our episode for this week. Thank you for such a great and wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully Varangi will be back next week. And for those of you in the area, the Laguna Beach Temple is officially open with the usual social distancing rules and wear a mask. And you can check out the Facebook page or the Instagram page. And those are in the details. And I invite you and encourage you to just come check out the temple, especially if you've never seen deities, want to see what that experience is like. So yeah. And we will be here again next week. And you can sign in live on those social media platforms too, if you don't want to visit in person. And yeah, thank you for your time. We will be here again next week, hopefully with Varangi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
There you go.